Hello, everyone. It's time for another episode of Off the Hook with Matty D. I'm your host, Matt DiNardo, and I never do this show alone. At least I try not to. I always like to bring in a special guest, and joining me once again is my friend and partner in crime. I'm going to call him that from now on, Captain Simone Valencia. Captain Simone, or just Simone, how are you?
What's going on, Matty?
You know, just great. I've been out a couple of times. I've been in your shop, as you know. Bought some beautiful flies from you. Did some top water a couple of weeks ago on some smallies, and then last week did some midwater. I was right, pipeline and downstream, and it was just fun. Couple hours, it was all I needed.
It's a great fishery,
Yeah.
you know, and the beauty of that area where you were at is you have so many species mixed up in there that you don't know what's going to happen when you go out. So it's always exciting. Yeah. And it's also really convenient and really close. So if you just have a few hours.
You know, since I've been doing stuff with you on Off the Hook with Matty D, and we've talked a lot about the James and the closeness, I've really been trying to take advantage of that. And it's a couple hours. I'm out there for 3 hours tops, and I forget the problems of the world, and I'm good.
It's phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just something that we shouldn't really take for granted. It's an incredible resource.
Yep.
It's an incredible resource. It's an amazing piece of water, super interesting piece of water from any angle that you see it, from a historical angle, from a cultural angle, from a biological, and even geological or geographical. Like the whole thing is just fascinating, and we could go on that specific section forever.
Forever, for sure.
But Matty,
Yeah.
we haven't talked since you went to Alaska.
Yeah, I could spend hours talking about this.
And we might.
I do have to do another newscast later on, so but yeah, it's okay. So Alaska was a dream come true.
You had been planning this trip for a minute.
For a long time. So it's been talked about in my group for 20 years. And we planned it for 3 years. 3 years ago, we pulled the trigger, put our first deposit down. And you're saying, so who is this group?
Yeah.
So one guy that I fish with, his name is Rich Von Olen. I have known him since sophomore year of college. So that's 31 years. That's a long time.
You don't
right?
got to give us those numbers,
Yeah,
Matty.
right. And then some other guys who have been in my group that I fish with, usually on the northern streams in upstate New York. 15 to 20 years I fished with. Alexander Lawn, Paul Ganji, Jimmy Fowles, who's not only an amazing fisherman, but a hunter. He does all these wild hunts and stuff like that. One of his friends came with us, Matt Albano, who just started fly fishing about 4 years ago. And I mean, it was awesome. And what we did, Simone, and this I think was made it great. Some of these lodges in Alaska will accommodate 20, 30, 50 people.
Yeah.
We wanted a lodge that was just our group. So that, and not that we're fishing with anybody else, but it was just our group. It was our getaway. We had talked about this for so long. We wanted to make it special.
Was 5 of you?
6.
6 of you?
6 of us, yeah.
That sounds like a great crew, man.
Perfect. And so 3 guides. So it's 1 guide per 2 anglers. 4 days, it's 6 days of fishing. 4 days you're on boats, long 22-foot with 30 horsepower jets, no props. And they take you all throughout the Kvichak River, which is the main river. And then 2 other days you're with the lodge owner, guide, pilot, Brad Waitman, and he takes you on flyouts. One flyout was 45 minutes away. The other flyout was about 15 minutes away. And you go for different species.
So that's what I was going to ask you. So this fishery is so foreign to me.
Yeah.
It's so unlike anything I've ever done. It's actually probably not that different for you from like upstate. I mean, it is and it isn't, right? You fish upstate New York, and there's a lot of these fish that are introduced to the Great Lakes region and that have taken on wild and do make these runs up the rivers that you're used to.
Yep.
What was that like?
So, okay, it probably ends right there in the terms of the fact that the fish were introduced into the Great Lakes to create a fishery, but they are completely different in Alaska because everything is sea-run, except for the rainbows. The rainbows live in Lake Iliamna, which is the main lake that we were on then against the Kvichak, and they come in and eat all of the eggs from the sockeye and silvers and things like that. What was amazing to me is where we were, and one of the flyouts we did, the fish were either in from the ocean in 12 hours or 24 hours. Some of them still had sea lice on them. So totally incredible. fought like crazy. And I like fishing upstate New York. I don't know that I could do it much more because I got spoiled. And here's why. When you fish upstate New York, and no matter whether it's the Salmon River or the Oak or many different streams up there, a lot of it is dead drifting with a fly, you're bouncing the bottom with a weight, and you're antagonizing a king or a coho to strike.
And that's because these fish are in their spawning run and not feeding.
They're not feeding, correct. The other fish that we went after, they're not yet fully into their spawn, and so you're casting 4-inch streamers. Yeah. As one guide said, you can fish any color you want as long as it's pink, because that's what they hit, right? So you're casting these 4-inch flies out, and you are just strip, and it's like 3-inch strip, 3-inch strip, 3-inch strip, pause. So the fly's doing this. And the silvers and the sockeye just come, and you can, gin clear water, you can watch them slam these flies. And all of a sudden it's like, zzz.
Something really special about a visual eat, right? Like that visual experience that we get a lot in fly fishing.
Right.
Because we are, in many ways, kind of restricted to shallower water. We get very visual eats, but there's something really special about seeing that fish's behavior. Yeah. It's kind of a different level of connection, but that's super cool, man.
Yeah,
it's super cool that you got to see these salmon like in their natural, like wild and native habitat. Your friends. Yeah. How many days were you out there?
We landed there on a Saturday. You start fishing on Sunday, and you fish till Friday. You leave on a Saturday, so it's a Saturday trip. So this is a chum salmon, and I'm going to tell you right now, this fish should never have been landed. Look at the size of this fish going into this net. 26 pounds is what the guide, who's Pat right there with the net. So I'm in the front of the boat, stripping, and all of a sudden, my rod just locks hard, like bent like that.
Matty is Lord of the Chum.
So the guy you're hearing in the background is my buddy Rich, and he goes, "You're on. You're
Lord of the Chum." The size of this chum.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited, right? I mean, you just hear me. Wow.
I love that face. Whoa.
Yeah. So he's like, "Oh, you're hung up," and Pat goes, "There's nothing to hang up here." He's on a massive fish. All of a sudden, this fish runs down behind the boat, wraps the fly line around that motor. I run back there. The tip now is into the motor. Literally, Simone, I'm stripping line out to release the rod because I know the rod is going to snap. All of a sudden, the rod goes boing, and Pat goes, "That fish is gone." I strip and pull back. It's still there. He goes, "Oh, my God." And I go, "We are landing this fish." That was a 20-minute fight. So this...
That's awesome.
So the guide, Brad, is next to me. We flew out to this river. This is called the Little Coo. And you see all the redfish. These are sockeye in their spawn mode. But what I'm fishing to is, see the edge of that tree, that branch there? There it is. There are 20 to 25, 30-inch rainbows sitting there that are sucking on eggs coming out of these. And this is unbelievable. This was about a 24-inch rainbow. Just gorgeous. I mean, look at the smile on my face there. So, it was incredible, Simone.
So when you going again?
26 or 27 is the real game plan. And Simone, I know this is foreign for you, but right now, right here on Off the Hook with Matty D, I'm inviting you because you will catch species of fish that you only see and hear about in books and videos and magazines and things that we read. And I think you would enjoy it because not only that, and there you are, so I'm going to come back to this real quick because we're going to get to you in a second. The number one thing I remember, the scenery.
Yeah, I bet.
Something incredible about it. I've grown up in the Northeast. I've seen mountains. I've never seen mountains like this. I've been on the West Coast numerous times. I've been in the Rockies. This was unbelievable. The water being pure glacier-fed water in some of these streams. Just, awesome stuff.
It sounds amazing. It sounds an amazing land to connect with. You know, I look at pictures of Alaska all the time, and it's like, that just looks incredible.
It was. It was pricey-ish, but it wasn't the most pricey. We took a middle-of-the-line road. I'll tell you right now, the lodge was about $9, and that included everything. Like, it was all meals, all this, all that.
I'll start saving.
Start saving, man. Laundry was done. Like, I overpacked. They do laundry every day for you if you want, all included.
Oh, that's very nice.
Very nice. So you can.
I also just appreciate a hospitality-forward approach to fishing.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, when we make these trips of a lifetime, what we really want to do is get away and like try to be taken care of, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a week out of your life, really,
Mm-hmm.
where you're just really trying to connect with something really simple and really basic, like the water, the
Yeah.
fish, the mountains, the scenery. Where if there's someone there to make it easy for you, I really
Yeah.
like. I appreciate that. So everything you're saying sounds.
It was incredible. And then to fish the same stream, the Little Coup, and I don't have the video here but we're fishing from, me to you 10 feet away, and 20 feet away is the brown bear that's eating the same sockeye that are, it's just like,
amazing. And he's just so
he
preoccupied
doesn't
with eating.
care. Yeah. He doesn't care about you or me. He wants the 35,000 sockeye in front of him. Yeah.
Which, so do we.
Really good. All right, so you're here today because we're going to talk about redfish, which I've known you now long enough. I think this is your favorite fish to go after.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you could, if you were to tell me that out of all the like 30 or so species we can target, I could only target one, I wouldn't hesitate for a second. Like, this is my baby. This
Yeah.
is my, this is the environment that I want to be in.
Mm-hmm.
The open water, the shallow water, the flats, the visual part of it, right? I get the comment that this is an aquarium, right?
Right.
Because it's so shallow, and
Yep.
yet it's so beautiful. The water's clear. You can see every single thing. And just being in that water is just special to me.
I mean, I'm watching you right here, and it is smiles galore. Which, like now, you're still smiling. The same thing when you just asked me about Alaska, because we connect to that particular fishery, to that fish. It's magical to us. You've tied the fly. There's something very special about, because you tie flies all the time like I do. When you tie that fly and that fish just,
It's
like, wow.
It's so cool to
Yeah.
see. And then, this video in particular, this was actually not in Virginia.
right.
This was in South Carolina. I have a really good buddy down there who actually pushes the boat around for me.
Which is
when
what
I
you
go
do for everybody else.
I get to see a lot of people fish, but I've only caught a handful of fish this year, of redfish this year. I haven't really gotten cast. So this to me is a really special moment. But the fact that, and this is why I started with who did you go with to Alaska? This to me is a special moment because it is about that team, and it's about all of the connections. The connection. This is my friend Bryant Wilson, and if you're ever in South Carolina, you should definitely get out with him.
Right.
And I called him up one night. I was down there, and you can see here's teamwork. Like,
Right.
he pushed me onto that fish. He gave me that shot. He allowed me to cast, and we were changing rod for pole, and it was just really nice to be able to do that. But as a guide, I feel when we're red fishing, I feel useful in that scenario. I
Right.
feel like it's not just nice to have me, but I feel crucial to the equation when we're side casting, because
Right.
if I don't put that boat in just the right place,
Yep.
then we're not gonna get that fish.
Yep. Like you did here with this. You're polling in this.
Added boy.
Yeah, I'm actually up on the platform there. This kid, I love this kid.
Yeah,
Right.
This kid, again, the relationships we build. This kid his name is Britton.
Yeah, bud.
He is amazing as an angler. He is an awesome kid. He's so funny, so witty, so smart. Kind of a pain in the butt because he's so smart and fun, which makes him my favorite. He's 14.
Oh, that's awesome. Look at the shallow water. Like you said, it's an aquarium. You can see everything.
everything.
You see the ground. You see the moss, the grasses, and whatever. And then off in the distance, you're seeing this fish. And how far? And these are all from your Instagram. How far are you casting out here?
So these are usually 60-foot casts. You can see that tail
Yes.
in the video. There's about 400 to
Perfect, big
500 fish right in front
Big
of her
strip.
right here, and there's a follow.
Just great video.
This didn't turn out really great, but this guy could really cast, right? This is Ben.
Yep.
He's a phenomenal angler. It's hard. right? The hardest part of this is the cast. If you can get that fly to those fish, they're not particularly picky. They are finicky, but they're not picky. You could
So explain that. That's an interesting statement.
So I like to call redfish fair. And I also like to call it where like trout fishing is a thinking man's sport.
Yeah.
And I'm not a thinking man. And anyone who knows me will tell you I'm not a thinking man. Red fishing is a very kind of almost athletic pursuit, right? It is a long cast. It is an accurate cast. It is a lot more like dart throwing or golfing than it is like figuring out the fish.
Okay.
There's not much to figure out with these fish when you're side casting for them, especially because our approach when we're side casting is so different from most other species. Usually you want to put something in front of the fish that they can see and they can come to it. We're taking that out of the equation, so we want to put something in front of the fish that they don't think they saw. And then they're like, oh, that's just too convenient. I'm going to eat that. So we need to be very subtle with our presentations and put it just in front and twitch it just right. However, what you throw at them, it doesn't matter. These fish are very opportunistic. When they are up on a flat like this, when they are up on the flat, there's crabs running around, there's shrimp, there's mullet all over the place. So they don't tend to make very hard runs when they are that shallow.
Gotcha.
They're just searching around for food. And a crab's not gonna outrun them, right? They're just gonna come in and they have these downward facing mouths. They're very good at picking stuff off the bottom. They're very good at foraging.
Okay.
They will engage on a chase too, but not as hard or fast as people would think, especially when you see those fish run. You think, oh, that's a very aggressive fish.
Right, yeah.
And in reality, they're pretty mellow in the water.
Wow.
Especially when they're shallow because there's so much food there for them that they don't have to work that hard. They are amazing eaters because the food is all around. Matter of fact, in a year of life, they can grow 17 inches from minnow to 17 inches.
Wow, in a year.
In a year. So they're very fast-growing fish. They're very fast-growing fish, and they get very old, too. So this guy's a year old, right? This little guy's a year old, a year and a half maybe. And I love them of all sizes, right? They have an interesting life journey. Most fish, the older they get, the harder they get to catch.
Yeah.
Redfish, the older they get, the easier they get.
Really?
Yeah, the big ones, like the truly big ones, so redfish can live up to 40, 50 years.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Okay.
They can get incredibly old. Like there's redfish in the water right now in the Chesapeake Bay that are older than me.
Well, since you're 21, it's...
I'm 34, man. And it's cool to catch a fish that is older than you.
For sure.
Like that to me is really cool.
Yeah.
But those fish are not picky or scared of anything because they swim in schools of thousands and they're 50 inches long. So they're not like there's few things that would go after them. So they're not particularly difficult. These guys, up to about 30, 35 inches, and when they're shallow, they're very wary because they have, at that point, dolphins are predators.
Gotcha.
Sharks are predators. Birds are predators. They remember, they're small enough to where they remember when there's a shadow over them.
It's not a good day.
That's not a good thing. And when we're casting a lure or a fly line on like above them, they see that shadow. They disperse.
Yeah.
They leave immediately. Tristan, this kid put on a show this year. Tristan's, I think, 17 right now. I keep getting these youth that hop on the boat and just
I love
put on
that
these classes.
because I think there's a stigma about fly fishing being the old man's game, and particularly the old white man's game, and you have young kids, you have women anglers, you have tons of different cultures and ethnicities coming out on the boat with you and fishing in the James with you and Keegan and Reed and everyone. And so I think we're expanding the sport, maybe too slow for my liking, but we are.
Because I want to share this with everybody.
Yeah.
Right? I think that everybody needs to experience this.
Right.
I think that if more people experience this, they'll take care of the resource a little better. Right. Can we go back to Tristan? I want to talk about Tristan a little bit.
Yeah.
This was Tristan's first redfish ever.
Really?
Tristan has been fly fishing for about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
He fishes a lot. He fishes bass ponds. That's what he fishes. And I always say bass fishing will make you good at fishing. If you can figure out how to catch bass, largemouth in particular, because they're so dynamic and ever-changing, and they can live in so many different kinds of environments, and if you can figure all of that out, you're going to be a great angler. Tristan hopped on the boat. He booked the trip with his dad. His dad wanted to take him out. He books the trip, and he's like, I've only ever bass fished, nothing else. Largemouth on a pond. That's all I ever do. I'm like, okay, Tristan, I need to see you cast, bud. Like, I want to see.
Right, because we've talked about this, and I'm going to go out with you. We've already set a date. I am nervous because of the casting that you are asking for, delicate presentation, ahead of the fish, distance. There's a couple of things that, I told you, I'm like, we need to go to a side channel first to make sure I can cast right.
We will get it done. I have seen you cast, Matty. I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned. I know you'll do it.
But go ahead. So you had to see how he casts.
We stepped out. I saw him cast, and I'm like, oh, we're going to do just fine.
Okay.
He was spectacular.
Right.
First redfish of the day. Well, we saw one tailing in the grass, and he went under, and we could not find him again. We pushed to a different flat, and we started seeing them push bait onto the bank, and we just pushed up there. And I turned around and pushed into the sun, so if we're pushing into the sun, we can't see them, right? Gotcha. There's glare in front of us. We have to have the sun behind our backs, and the higher the sun, the better we can see them.
Right.
But I was pushing into the sun to turn around and do this, push this bank in the direction we could see. And out of the glare come 3 fish of his right hand. So he had to backhand cast. Because if he were to cast this way, he would have hooked his dad and myself and not caught the fish. And we saw them, and he caught sight of them immediately. And we saw them at 40 feet, but they got further out, and he kept pivoting and put a backhand cast at his 5 o'clock at about 70 feet, stripped once, and he was on immediately. I mean, it was a really beautiful and exciting and challenging scenario, but we saw it all happen. It was very visual, and that's that connection. They were over this beautiful grass flat in about a foot of water. So the whole experience was very visual. And then this guy, this size, this fish was turning, when he was pulling, he was turning the boat.
That's incredible. Because that's not a big fish to me.
No, that's a 20-inch fish.
But your boat is super light because you're pulling it, right?
Yeah.
So we're not talking about something. So it just glides across the top of the water. There's not a deep hull.
No.
And so therefore it can pull. I cannot wait to hopefully experience that. Let me not put my foot in my mouth, because you'll go out and you'll be like, Matty, you really you struggle.
You're gonna do just fine, man. You're gonna do just. I've seen you cast. I've seen you work a fly. And then this one was another fish he caught that day. He did really well. This was a 26, 27-inch fish. This is a lot. This is what we call over slot.
Okay.
This is just a good fish, really good fish on shallow water. Right? Like, this is a solid fish. This is on the, not upper end, but mid-upper end of fish that we find in shallow water. Because once they hit reproductive maturity, their behavior changes. That's around 6 to 7 years old.
Okay.
Once they hit around 30 inches. So this is a 27. He's
almost there.
He's almost there.
So did they not come into flats then at that point?
They rarely do.
I see.
So then they seek big, deep water, and they school up and they live in schools, and you rarely see them alone. There's one area in the country, and this is another cool thing about this fish is they're all over, but there's one area in the country, Louisiana, where you'll see them cruising, the big ones cruising solo in shallow water. And shallow water there is like 2 feet.
Right.
But we're talking about fish that are 14, 15 inches tall. Wow. Right?
So just big, thick, and so therefore you're looking 40, 50-inch long fish then, I'm assuming.
In shallow, yeah, I mean, they're big. But here, and in most of the country, the bull reds do, when we call, these are commonly called puppy drum. Right, when they're young. To me, this is redfish in my head, and the other ones are bulls. But those bulls school up and they seek 30, 40 feet of water. Yep. And they hang out around the bay all summer long. Owen broke my heart several times that day.
A lot of misses.
A lot of misses. So here's a bull.
This is a bull red, right? Versus this, and that's why I was trying to make sure we had that picture. So so this you caught on a fly. This was kind of I don't want to say a freak thing for you, but you saw it. You were with was it Reed or Keegan on this one?
No, I was with a friend, Hannah. Okay. And I had told her, like, hey, conditions look really good tomorrow. I'm going. She's a regular. She's booked a number of trips, and she's also a really good angler. Right. And I just was like, this is not a guided trip. I'm gonna scout this area. Right. And I need someone who can put the fly in front of the fish just in case we see them. Right. She was like, absolutely, I'm calling off work.
And let's not give the last name then.
No, cannot. She also has a very important job. But we got out there. Actually, everyone at work was like, yeah, you should definitely go. She told them exactly what we were doing, and everyone was like, you should definitely go. So I don't think it's an issue. But we ran into them, and she broke 2 off. Mm-hmm. And all I had was an 8 weight with me, which this is a 10, 11 weight fish. This is a big fish. Yeah. And all I had was an 8 weight set up for the shallow water with 12-pound leader. And this is a 50-pound fish in the middle of the bay. It drug us around for about an hour, 20 minutes.
So, okay, so we were talking, most of the stuff you're doing is flats, a foot deep, 1.5 foot, 18 inch. What's the depth you're looking at here when you were scouting this water?
30 feet.
Wow. So because these drum, because I've been out, they will come up to the top as a school. Yeah. And it's a sight to see because all of a sudden the entire top water turns gold. And you're like, oh my gosh.
It's like a giant basketball rolling in the water. Yeah. It's just this, you can't miss. We spotted this school 100 yards away. And we made our move to it. And for this reason, they're a lot easier, right? Like you see them far away. They're in these big schools. We approach them with the engine on. Right. I don't have to pull. Right. I don't have to push the boat. And we can get pretty close to them. It has to be quick, and pretty close is within 50 feet, so relatively close. But if you put something in front of them, they're going to take it. Yeah. Because in that kind of school, they get very competitive. They become feeding machines, and they eat like big blue crabs. They will eat eels. They will eat menhaden. They will eat bluefish. They will eat Spanish mackerel. They will eat whatever crosses their path. Right. So especially in those kind of schools, they just get really competitive.
So all you got to do is put something in there, strip it, and all of a sudden it's game on.
It's game on.
Yeah.
And this is a don't get me wrong, this is a very exciting fish.
Oh, for sure. If you're fighting a fish for an hour, and I understand you were underweighted for the fish, but still, that's a great fight all day.
Oh, it's a phenomenal experience. And this fish is older than me. Right. There's no doubt in my mind that this is a 40-year-old fish. Wow. It's a very, very cool fish.
Yeah, for sure. And these are some of the flies that you use when you're going in the shallows.
This one's actually, that one's actually for the bulls.
So the bigger, okay.
That's about a 4-inch crab made of deer hair, and it just kind of resembles a blue crab.
Then this one?
That's a shrimp. That's for shallow water. Yep. and that's about 3 inches. And that's kind of that's the cool thing about this approach is I'm not necessarily trying to draw those fish to the fly. I'm putting that fly in front of them. So I use a lot of natural colors, right, with a little pop here and there.
Yep.
But these are all very muted, rust, tan, olive, natural-looking colors as to not throw those fish off. If I was to put something really bright in front of them, chartreuse, hot
like
pink.
we do for stripers or shad, where hot pinks and chartreuse, all that kind of stuff, because we're looking for an attractor. This has to mimic what they're feeding on, which, as you said, is the crab, the shrimp, small menhaden, or whatever that might be.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
we just want to put something that catches them off guard. Like, I didn't see that there. And then you just convince them to eat. You make it pretty easy for them to eat it. Because they have so much on that flat to eat, they're not making big runs
right.
when they're that shallow.
And that's the difference. When we started this conversation, when I talked about fishing in Alaska, I am stripping and they are making large runs to come and strike because they're seeing it from 10, 15, 20 feet away. Oh, there's that pink thing. I love pink. And, it's wild.
It's a very
different.
The mentality is very different.
Yeah.
Than almost any other kind of fishing, right? There's flats fishing, and then there's honestly everything else. And I think the mentality, like the approach, is just very different. I wouldn't say one's better than the other, because if you want action, if you want to be busy all day, fishing blind versus sight, you're going to be casting a lot. On a good day of red fishing, we cast 20 times. And that's over the course of a full day. You cast 20 times.
Right.
But every time you cast,
you're purposely going for a fish that you have seen.
Exactly.
That you were seeing, correct.
So in theory, you could catch on an average day 20 fish if you do everything
perfect.
right.
Right.
Which never happens.
Right.
Right? It never happens.
So a good day of red fishing, if everything is wonderful, a 3 to 5 fish
That's
fish
phenomenal.
to hand day is phenomenal.
That's phenomenal.
Right. Yeah, it's all good.
So I would say that's phenomenal for sight casting. Blind casting, you can do numbers, right? So these fish do hang out in 4-6 feet of water, and if you have current, they do sit behind the current, very similar to trout,
Right.
or they sit behind the current, waiting for stuff
To fall
to
through.
swing through.
Yep.
For the current, for the tide mostly, to bring things to them. And they do that, and those are feeding fish, right? Those are actively feeding fish. But when we're sight casting, those might be laid up fish, resting fish, and it's our job to turning them into feeding fish by making it very easy for them to eat.
Gotcha.
So it's a very different approach, but you can do really well swinging flies all day on a point or a cove where those fish have been. They're also cool because they're like clockwork. If I saw a fish
At 5 o'clock in the afternoon in one location, it's going to come
I'm going
back.
to see it at 6 o'clock the next day.
That's interesting.
At an hour later because of the tide.
Right.
But that's where they're going to be. They are, I get on these like cycles where I find these schools. And this is why I find it super important to be out there as often as I am.
Sure.
It's because they do shift.
Yep.
But they shift little. So if I'm there all the time, I can plan like, it's an incoming tide. They've been hanging out here on the incoming tide. This happened 2 days ago. I saw that we had an incoming tide, we made like a 20-mile run on the bay, and I was like, I know where they're going to be. We pulled in, and within minutes, we saw hundreds of redfish in a school. Wow. And it was just one of those like, it's on. But it's where I had been seeing them.
Right.
We've had multiple great days in the last couple of weeks within 20 feet of where we've been seeing them on that specific low to incoming part of the tide, very shallow. It looks like an aquarium out there. I mean, it's very, very pretty.
That's incredible.
So that's part of the cool thing with these fish. And again, the connections and relationship, the connection with that fish for me, I've never kept one.
Right.
I've never.
Everything you do is catch and release. Yeah.
Yeah, but ever. I mean, like never kept one because those are like my pets. I go to my aquarium to see them, you know, like they are that. It would feel so wrong. And we catch a lot of them in the legal keeping size, and I just can't.
Yep. No,
And
I
I
get
hear
it.
they're delicious. And it breaks my heart that they are.
So yeah, I mean, I never keep fish, but the only time that I have kept is in Alaska. I did come home with 38 pounds of salmon fillet. I mean, which was incredible.
And that to me is a little different, right? Because
Yeah.
those fish are on their spawning run.
Yeah.
And
And they're 4-year fish. They're going to, yes, for sure.
and that's the
But-
end of their life.
But I mean, Alaska salmon, you have to keep. All right, I don't want to talk more
makes
about
sense.
Alaska. So let's talk a little bit about season. You're in kind of the peak, but now coming down a bit as the waters are going to get cooler, or no?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So part of the beauty of redfish in Virginia is that it's a very long season, and they're here year round. But their behavior changes a lot. I pick them up right at the end of striper season is when I begin to look for them.
Right.
For the redfish in the shallow. Around April, May, the big schools of bulls actually come in like 5 feet of water.
Wow.
They come in from the ocean. They spend their winter at ocean because it's a little warmer. It's a bigger water to cool down. They come into the Chesapeake Bay, and then they cruise shallow April, May. And then they go back into the middle of the bay to spend their summers. Around late May is when I really begin my season, my guiding season. That's when those shallower water reds, the smaller reds, begin to spread out a little. So what happens is that in the winter, usually around December, those fish school up really thick
Right.
and move somewhere, the back of some muddy creek that stays warmer through the winter, that gets muddy, dark bottoms, hold a lot more heat, and they
yes.
just sit back there for the remaining of the winter
Got it. Okay.
in massive schools. So all of the biomass is concentrated in the back of one
Those-
creek.
And they're eating and foraging and.
Barely.
Really?
They just go pretty dormant.
Oh.
And they just sit. They just tuck in the back of some creek, and I rarely see them. Really hard to find. Once mid-May comes around and we start seeing that water temp in the 70s, I start to see them start to spread out, and that way we get more shots through the day. If I was to
Gotcha.
target them in the winter, I've only ever found one good school in the winter. I don't fish for them that much in the winter because I know this. But I found one good school in the winter. On a warm day, I was like, yeah, let's go, let's do it. And I pushed back into a creek, and I found hundreds of fish back there. I hooked one. The school spread out, and I never saw them again. So I can't really take someone's money for that.
Right,
You know?
for sure. For sure.
That's not good business. I want a day where you're getting shots every 20 minutes, get a shot. Like that to me is a great day. So I wait for them to start spreading out over the flats and begin to hunt. When June, July come around, they really spread out.
Okay.
And there's not as many schools, so you get a single over here, 2 fish cruising on the bank over there. And we just run into a lot of singles and doubles. Singles and doubles are hard because those fish don't have competition.
Right.
So everything has to be perfect with those fish.
Right.
Those are the hardest fish. July, August, sometimes it gets too hot, but this year it never did. The water temperature never got too hot. We had a very hot June, and it brought the water temperature up, and then it just
stayed.
kind of mellowed out.
Yep.
It was a pretty mellow rest of the summer, so the water it never got super, super hot. We never got that August slump where those fish barely move. We had a few days where we were finding them with their heads in the grass, not looking out, like literally just kind of hiding under the grass. And we would pass by them and see them like under the boat, and we'd be like, you see that? Like you could grab it. But those fish were not doing anything. And it was only, and that does happen in August.
Right.
So August early morning, like not early morning, but morning time is really good. This year it was just solid all year long. Then September comes around and the water just drops a little bit and it rings that dinner bell for these fish. And it's like, I have to fatten up for the winter.
Okay.
And they they begin to school up in September, and we've been seeing a lot of huge schools. Really, I mean, it's a sight to see because I try to capture it on video, but it doesn't actually
Show up the way you want it to.
No, not at all. Because when you see them in like with polarized glasses, you're like, how are there that many? But it's a super cool experience in September, and the water starts to clear up. As the water gets colder, it becomes denser. All of the sediment goes to the bottom,
Right.
and it begins to clear up, and we begin to have these beautiful visual experiences. And then October and November, that water is gin clear. The thing with gin clear water is you can see more fish. We'll see more fish.
They'll also see you.
They'll see you, so we have to stay further and further away.
Right.
Many times I'll push to about 60 feet, and I'll have an angler like, can you get me any closer? And I'm like, I can, but that fish isn't going to be there if I do.
Right.
And I put that on the table. I'm like, I can try to.
But it could spook them and go away.
But more than likely, because you're up there. You're a bird.
Right.
We've had, so on 2 days ago, I don't even know what day of the week it is.
This is Thursday.
So on Tuesday, we ran into a school of 4 or 5, and they cruised right to the boat, and they were within 40 feet. And that to me was an unrealistic shot. It was the moment you move that rod,
They're gone.
it's gone. They'll see that movement and be like, that's a bird. And that's it. So to me, a more realistic shot is that 50 to 60.
60 foot. Okay.
That keeps us just out of sight, but in range. And this is why I always say this is an athlete's pursuit. You want to get that. It's all about that cast.
Gotcha.
After that cast is down, getting them to it is actually pretty easy. It's putting that fly where it needs to go when it needs to be there. And then at the end of November, I shut it down around Thanksgiving. I just stopped seeing a lot of fish at that point because they have schooled up and a lot of them have already pushed back into those creeks. And that's in Virginia, right? If you go further south, they're winter fishing. Like if you go to North Carolina, where the water stays a good 10 degrees warmer.
They're fishing all the way through December and January. Yeah.
And February, all year long. And if you go a little bit even further south, like South Carolina, in the winter is really cool. Their fishery in the winter is a lot like ours in the fall. So it's a really cool fishery all around. Also, lots of opportunities for other species.
Sure.
Like we get stripers shallow. We get a ton of speckled trout. We caught quite a few specks. We would put a cast out of redfish and a little speck would just beat it to it because specks are a lot more aggressive on the take.
Gotcha. Okay.
And a little speck would just like
Turn and take it.
this. You put a cast out of redfish this big and a speck this
Comes
big
in,
just
steals it.
like crazy fast. I don't know where you don't see it. We never see
Just
it coming.
it just happens, right?
There's flounder, also bluefish. Just off the drop-offs of the flats, there's a ton of bluefish. And whenever we're having a harder day,
You switch species just to get into something.
and we rarely not catch fish. We might not catch a redfish, and it does happen because it is very challenging. We always see redfish. We always get. I have not gone a day without getting a shot.
But the shot could be rejected, or you could spook it away, or for sure.
So I understand how difficult it is, and that's the charm of it, right? Like that really is that's really the thing that makes me want to go back. It's really difficult, but everything in between your shots is also magical. There's sea turtles. There's rays coming right under your feet. There are little blue crabs that eat your fly, that grab onto your fly if it's just dangling off the boat. There, you see the shrimp popping. You see the massive schools of mullet. You see it's everything out there. You see the birds. You see the grasses. You see to me, it's all about that environment.
For sure.
That we're in, and I've never had a bad day out there. I've gone days without catching a fish, but I've never had a bad day out there.
Right. We're going to leave it there, Simone, because we have had a great conversation, number one. But you know how it is. We've seen your Instagram videos. We know you're closing down the physical store, but you're going to keep an online shop open. It's also a way to get in touch with you and Reed and Keegan and everyone. The phone number will stay, I assume, correct?
For now.
For now.
But yeah, so the retail location is costing me days on the water.
Yep.
And we are moving forward without a physical location. However, all of the things that we've become known for, which is all of our educational experiences and hospitality-based experiences, that's going to grow. So, Matty, an invite here for you on the 19th, on Thursday.
Okay.
Which is it this Thursday?
It's
next Thursday.
Yep.
Next week on the 19th, we are going to be tying flies at 6:30 p.m.
Okay.
At Triple Crossing Brewing in Fulton Hill. You can just come and hang out and talk fish. You can come and tie your own flies. You can come and hang out, eat pizza, have a beer. If you want to drink a beer, I don't know. That's on you.
Sounds good.
If you wanted to do a free casting lesson, on the 29th, I am doing a free casting lesson at Shields Lake at 11 a.m. That's going to be 2 hours of instruction for free. You do not have to have your own equipment. You do not have to have your own anything. You just have to RSVP. So if you do want to RSVP, reach out to me on my Instagram, send me an email, currentculturefly.com. All of our emails are going to be there. You can give us a call at this number. All I need is an RSVP for that class. If you want to learn how to fly fish, this is a great free first step. All of that kind of stuff is going to continue going. We have inshore saltwater classes for intermediate anglers coming. The 22nd of September is full. I have 1 seat left for the 13th of October and 2 seats open for the 27th of October. So these are the things that people have gotten accustomed to from us. And the reason why we opened the shop was to provide that.
Right.
But now we have the ability to come to more places.
And come to people and make it a little more convenient, so to speak. In that
Correct,
respect.
for everybody. So we'll be doing more of these classes at different places. Best way to stay updated is to join our newsletter on our website.
Yep.
We will keep you updated through there, or follow us on Instagram, which stays the most updated, Current Culture Fly. My personal is Captain Sammy Valentino. Either of those are going to get you the information to get started. And we really, that really is my ultimate satisfaction in my job, is showing someone something that I truly love.
Right.
From beginner to expert, from first timer, making it literally free to learn to cast. You don't even have to have your own rod, to taking you on a full day trip, sight casting tricky fish in the Chesapeake Bay, and everything in between those 2 points.
Perfect.
So that's my invitation to you to come
I will
tie
be there for
flies.
the fly tying class. I will.
That sounds awesome.
There you go.
I'll see y'all.
Once again, Simone has been my guest today on Off the Hook with Matty D, talking redfish. I can't thank him enough, and we will see you next week for another episode of Off the Hook with Matty D.